Hello and welcome to the Tech on Toast podcast. This is season number 10. It's brought to you by OpenTable. OpenTable is a global leader in restaurant tech, helping more than 60,000 restaurants worldwide fill 1.7 billion seats a year. OpenTable's world-class technology empowers restaurants to focus on what matters most: your team, your guests, and your bottom line, while enabling diners to discover and book the perfect restaurant for every occasion. With best-in-class table management software and valuable 24/7, 365 in-person support for restaurants, why not schedule a demo today? Visit opentable.co.uk/restaurant-solutions to get started. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the next episode of the Tech on Toast podcast. And this week, I'm delighted to be joined by Patrick Eve, Head of UK at Nash. Patrick, how are you?
All good. Thanks for having me.
And it's your first podcast.
It is indeed. Yeah, be gentle.
Let's get that out of the way right at the start. And what are you doing? You live in Oxford, right?
I do. Yeah, so I'm in London a lot, but
visiting.
Green and sunny climes of Oxford, which is...
Mate, West is best, I say. Does Oxford count as the West?
It's kind
Not really.
Some people call it the Midlands, but...
Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah. I think I call it the West. Because it's nice.
Yeah.
And there's a Molly's Motel in Oxford, right? Is that right?
On the way in? Yeah, absolutely. Was that part of Soho House, I think, on the way out? A420.
I think Soho House conceptually brought it to us.
Yeah.
I don't think they own it per se, but yes, that's the one. It's lovely.
The milkshakes are as good as they say.
They have the drive-through, don't they?
Yeah,
very cool.
Yeah.
We have one in Bristol, but we don't have the drive-through.
Somewhat incongruous in the area, but anyway.
Have you been to this venue before? Have you been to Brewdog?
I've been here once. Yeah, it's really nice, isn't
cracking, isn't it? I was just talking to James outside saying such a unique venue and just a great example of what hospitality does when it's kicking. But he was telling me, we need it to be busier. This business model doesn't work right now. So it's very interesting. And tell us a little bit about you before we get into Nash and talk about how Nash works. How have you got to this point in your career?
Yeah, started life actually in retail. So was one of the managing directors of Zigzag, just at the point when all the e-commerce businesses were going mad, shipping goods overseas. Their biggest headache by a million miles was returns. So we built a returns platform over 5 years and sold that to Global Blue.
Wow.
But working with the large brands like ASOS and Boohoo and Nike, North Face, people like that.
So my missus has me returning stuff on it. Thank you very much for building that. I appreciate it. You definitely made my life easier.
Hopefully it's easier.
What was it like, just out of interest? But prior to that, I'm guessing it was very manual process, right?
Yeah, it was a lot of calling customer service, a lot of printing out labels. Lockers weren't a big thing. Yeah. Drop-off points were just coming in. But it was pretty painful. But of course, the big point behind it, and I think even more applicable now to hospitality as well, is understanding the data. Yeah. Who are your customers? How are they behaving? Why are they returning? Size issues.
Yeah, it's invaluable, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And what they call serial returners, tracking them down, blocking them.
Her name's Kerry Lewis, just if anyone wants to know. She lives in my house. I've never shouted her out before, but she is a serial returner. She will just shop though like that, as in she will shop, buy multiple things and then return 90% of it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that's very annoying for the girl.
I think our record was somebody who bought 19 pairs of wedding shoes.
What? In one go?
Kept one, returned 18. So it's a pretty expensive for the brand.
Wow. So and where did you go from there? That's just a unique experience, right? Getting involved in that stuff. I think.
Yeah. So that was really building a marketplace around delivery, but on the return side, on the reverse logistics, and then from there went to be Chief Commercial Officer at Gopher.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Great team there, building this marketplace really for delivery. Obviously working with clients like Co-op and Screwfix, Asda, and just really understanding the elements of same day really, and completely different beast in many ways from
and
return.
in its real growth phase, I presume at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was very much. I mean, around the COVID time, of course. So there was a massive impetus around.
Yeah.
No one's going to stores. You need it delivered to your house, and I think it was really took the likes of Gopher outside of hot food and into grocery, into retail, obviously DIY, building the likes of Screwfix as well. Yeah, and I think DIY those trains have stayed. It's
crazy, right, over that period of time. I mean, it always is, but I think I remember I was building my office during the COVID period and trying to use Screwfix to buy, whatever, plasterboard, whatever it might have been, to do and it was just, they were like, suppliers were becoming so scarce.
Yeah.
It was insane. That was an eye-opener and a very different industry to hospitality industry, right? Is it, or very different industry?
I mean, there are
customer facing. Obviously.
I think that there are. We'll always say that there are multiple flavors around same day. Be it customer experience, urgency, size of the goods you're moving, value of the goods you're moving. But some of the fundamentals are there. And I think that, at Nash, what we're seeing is obviously a creep from hospitality into retail, into pharmacy, into grocery, probably the fastest growing segment for us. And with that comes complexity at the customer side, at the store side, customer services team side. And how can you really create that layer of infrastructure that gives them total control over any store, different opening hours, different locations. You need to really be able to provide a single platform that often they want to work with internal fleets, often they want external fleets, sometimes want a hybrid, and really just be able to give that sort of unique but harmonized customer experience according to the trade that they're in.
Yeah, the end user there's a lot of work that goes into the end user being able to just pick up something and order it straight off, right? I think that the understanding of the complexities behind that isn't common knowledge, I suppose, in terms of what you guys build to enable that to happen. It's super interesting. How long were you doing that then? How long were you at Gopher?
So a couple of years at Gopher, and then now coming up to 2 years running Nash for the UK. Nash, originally out of the US, started life primarily in catering, has evolved enormously in the last 2 years, really moving very firmly into hospitality, pharmacy and grocery. We have got some exciting developments in retail as well, launching new services around the likes of ship from warehouse, same day delivery, not only as well as ship from store, obviously. And then evolving, I think, towards other elements, more specialist around big and bulky. Yeah. Imagine sofas, chilled, frozen meal kits. So, as the market evolves, there's a huge number of different areas for us to cover. And with that, we bring multiple partners on board. So we're about 500 carriers at the moment on the platform.
Wow.
Live across 4 continents, with Australia, Europe, UK, Australia, entering, US and Canada, and now entering into Latin America as well.
And if you had to give me your best pitch for Nash, so someone who's never met you before, has no clue what it does, how would you give it us? Excuse me.
Yeah, I think most people understand the concept of a marketplace for delivery or an aggregator. We're certainly all of those things. I think we take it to the next level in terms of being that sort of customizable logistics infrastructure layer that really gives you the ability to work seamlessly across all of your different delivery needs, internal fleets, external fleets, even customized jobs right down to first-time customer, returning angry customer, all the way just to create that very, very sort of customized experience that they can manage themselves internally. All of the communications, regardless of if it's out through an internal driver or if it's through an external fleet, it will all be customer branded. And I think it sort of aligns a lot with what we're seeing generally in terms of the evolution of tech stacks within all types of businesses. If you look at the way the Amazon to Shopify relationship evolved 7-8 years ago now, why sell on a marketplace when you can own and manage your own tech stack? You can customize it. You can plug in the different elements.
Yeah, that ownership, that journey, owning the customer journey that, obviously 10 years ago we do totally face-to-face, and we do in-house, is that owning of the brand piece is definitely, for the smarter players have been doing it a while, as you say, but like more and more people are latching onto that now. And I presume seeing benefit from that? Yeah,
I think there is sort of about 3 sort of core benefits, really. One is really having total control over your customer experience. Second, really being able to have your customer data. Yeah. We put that in the consideration.
It's really interesting because
the food marketplaces.
The aggregator data has been a conversation in this podcast probably 30, 40 times probably over the last year or so. And the aggregators obviously get that first-party customer data when they're talking to someone places an order. And the end user, the operator who is supplying the fried chicken, how much do they get of that? Just how much are they getting of that data? Are they literally getting customer name, email even, or?
No, just the customer name. And obviously now, once you turn on self-delivery and then either manage that internally, externally, or a hybrid model where you're running both your internal fleet and then at capacity flick it over to third-party fleets, all the information that is required for the delivery is identical to the information that you're going to want to be able to use to then build that relationship with the customer. So the telephone number, the email, where do they live, how often do they order, what's their birthday, and that kind of information. And again, the tech stack is now there where you can manage all the delivery piece, you can now manage the loyalty piece. You can manage the online ordering, right the way through to the upstream to the lead generation, the filling the funnel with the customers, the outbound marketing piece. Yeah. So it's really a natural evolution for merchants of all sizes to want to bring that under their own control. I think a lot of what we see in retail, for example, with the likes of, say, a Screwfix or a Boots, who are dipping their toes in the marketplace element, but I think at some point that they're going to want to really reinforce how they own that full experience, right the way from the doorstep experience, the customer data, the number of SKUs that they offer on their sites.
Yeah, I was going to ask about SKUs because that complexity alone is something that, and obviously, I suppose the narrower their choice, the more money they're going to make, or the more margin they're going to make. Would that be right to say, or the easier it is to reach the customer and do business?
Yeah, I think that SKUs are really limited by that delivery experience, right? So if you are limited to on-demand 2 wheels, then you're going to be able to have to limit it, and then potentially even look at the insurance behind the delivery service. Can they really manage a £250 power drill, or does it cover the?
That's a very good point.
Are you going to take that risk, right? So you want to have that kind of control that will say, right, those kind of jobs are longer jobs or batch jobs or big and bulky or high value, and how am I going to manage those and channel them in the right direction to the right fleet at the right time?
And you guys do, and you do real-time tracking, don't you? In terms of you understand, because I had a previous, as I mentioned a lot, few months at Direct at some point in my career, and we were looking at driver tracking at that point, and the ability to be able to see, we were just talking with Pinpoint, who are an ATS system, talking about candidate tracking and timing how long it takes a candidate to go through a recruitment process. Very similar in the driver process, understanding when my product leaves my back door at the kitchen, how long it takes then to get to the consumer, and what it looks like on that journey. How much transparency do you have over that?
Yeah, it's an absolutely core basic minimum really for the fleets that we're onboarding onto the platform. Their ability to give us the driver status, the driver information, share that driver telephone number with the customer who's waiting for it, have the live tracking. That information is not only going to the customer, it needs to go into the store. You need to be able to give them sufficient prep time, warn them the driver's on the way. If there are incidents, you need to channel those notifications through to customer service teams so that they can take action, notify drivers if there's an issue in real time. So it's really the sort of the live tracking piece is absolutely critical. I think prior to that, there's also a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. If you take grocery as an example, with route optimization. So you're also actually making sure that before the driver even is notified, you've already carefully planned all the routes that they're going to take. Has that fleet got the capacity?
And who does that? So
Yeah, we do that.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay.
Yeah, so we absorb that information in, and we'll do the route optimization. We'll work out the capacity of the fleet and say, okay, that fleet operates in the northern sector of that city. They have the right type of vehicles. They've got a right number of drivers. We can do X number of drops, and really, I suppose fundamentally, you're looking to optimize the cost per drop. So it's ensuring that you're always getting the right number of items onto a vehicle, and that the ultimate cost per drop is the lowest possible with the highest level of reliability.
That's insane. Because I remember going back to my operator hat on at Prime Minister, we were super paranoid about where our pie went. We put the pie on the bike, and we were always worried about that last mile, kind of how it worked out and where it went and how it was handled, and more about the actually as it went on, as we got busier on delivery, more about the time that it took, and it was a huge concern. I still think that a lot of operators share that concern in terms of that last mile delivery, but I suppose you guys there's quite a lot of transparency there already, right? You just talked through a lot of it there.
Yeah.
Are we at that final stage where there's total transparency through that process? I know there's humans involved, so not always easy.
Yeah, no, I think you definitely touch on that point. I think the effectively the trend that we're seeing is, I think there's probably this middle ground where people will, merchants will say, well, actually, we do want to manage both a small internal fleet and then top it up with a third party.
So you flick it on when you've reached your capacity.
Or we operate something called a dispatch strategy, which effectively will identify whether or not that job is optimally carried by the internal fleet or the external.
Cool. You might. And is that like on a dashboard you'd manage where you'd say, look, this job isn't worth us doing, basically, this is more,
Yeah. A good example is you might well have a high value long distance customer. You might want to send one of your own team off with that, and keep the shorter jobs for the third party fleets, keeps the price down. and actually increases reliability. You will see a bit of a drop in reliability amongst fleets if you go beyond 3 miles. Generally, food doesn't travel very well beyond 3 miles anyway.
It's very true.
But
Even
also drivers don't particularly like to go beyond 3 miles as well. It's 3 miles out, 3 miles back. So if it's 5 miles, then they're less likely to take the jobs, so you can pass those jobs on to your internal fleets. But yeah, from a transparency perspective, it really is about giving, both from a price perspective, from a performance perspective. I think if you have your internal fleet only, or if you only work with one fleet, you don't really have that middle layer that gives you total visibility that says, how is my internal fleet performing? How is that individual driver performing? How are we rating fleet A against fleet B in this location at that store, even at this time of day?
I think it's fascinating because obviously, not 10 years ago, this industry didn't exist. Well, not didn't exist. Obviously, we had takeaways and delivery was starting to form, but this type of detail that you're now talking about, the ability, and we talked about data right at the start, to be able to see this journey, the last mile, in real detail and actually in process as you're doing it is fascinating. And really it comes down to the user, right? Because the customer, the experience that we want to provide when we're in the 4 walls of a restaurant has to be 5-star. That's what it comes down to, right? The fact that you guys can kind of can I say guarantee? Is that fair? Assure that
massively increase reliability and probability of success.
Oh, you're well trained. But yeah, to almost guarantee that customer experience. That's your job, right? Or that's what Nash is there to do, right?
Yeah, reliability is definitely at the core of it. Customer experience, but also behind the scenes, streamlining the operations actually within a store in the same way that you've now, pay at the till, pay at a tablet, sit down, take away, click and collect. Delivery is obviously a core component of the revenue streams now, and that's evolving. As we see, I think a real trend that we're seeing right now is the number of merchants and restaurants that are now moving into catering. I think we've been slow on catering in the UK versus, say, the US.
Describe catering. Do you mean via
corporate,
doing multiple?
So larger deliveries. And a great example. An order is put through, bike arrives. Well, actually, it's not big enough for a bike. I need 2 bikes, or do I need a car? Would I rather have 2 bikes zooming through the streets rather than 1 car? Because
there was a firm in London about 3-4 years ago, Yellow Branding, I can't remember what they're called now, it's really embarrassing, but they basically, in Prime Minister, we used to do those big corporate orders, and we used to use them for that. They got bought by someone in the end, but they were the City Gate or something like that. I can't remember what they were called.
City Link, was it?
City Link, maybe.
That's a while back.
And basically we were providing them with multiple orders, and they were delivering that, but there was definitely a market for them because of the nature of our product. We were allowed to do that with weddings and all kinds of stuff like that, business meetings. But I agree, I think that because it's an untapped market, right? I think people have worked out virtual brands now so they can get multiple products out off the same grill.
Every day, large organisations, I think Amazon came out today saying we want all employees back in the office 5 days a week. You need some carrots as well as sticks to get the employees back in.
Very true.
Free food is obviously an excellent one. So I think there's a huge trend towards catering. We're seeing evolution around frozen meal kits. And so obviously part of our future roadmap also is going to be adding fleets that might do next day delivery, long distance, same day, frozen.
Your insight's insane, isn't it? Because I suppose you're at the front of all this, so you get to literally feel what the customers are talking to you about before any of us would realise as a user. And those trends you're seeing, you were saying you're quite big in grocery, but around the hospitality side as well, is it a similar type? Are you seeing those similar type trends coming out that people are looking at ways of varying what they can offer?
Yeah, I think catering is probably the biggest driver right now, without doubt. I think it is looking at how you can bring as much of your brand into people's homes, be it on the small plate orders, the larger orders, catering into offices, meal kits, and then frozen is, I think, slowly growing as well. And that would be out of the store rather than out of course, grocery. So those are probably sort of some of the biggest trends that we're seeing. But I think that, the real ultimate goal is, of course, high reliability. You can't launch any of these services and then damage your brand. So you've got to tread very carefully.
I hear these 99% on quotes all the time from different tech. It's important, right? And I think I always talk about this quote from Andy Maynard from Wagamama, talking about how he buys tech or what he expects from great tech, and it's just about being on all the time. So I just need great support if it breaks, and then but we want to be on. We can't if we lose an hour, we lose a couple of million quid or whatever it might be, right? So it's that ability to stay on all the time, and that people's threshold for tech breaking is changing every year, right? It's getting less and less because we all expect everything to work constantly. So I imagine for you guys that's a challenge to keep up with it and remain reliable.
From the tech perspective, it's relatively straightforward for us to keep the platform up and running at all times. The core reliability aspect is really about the fleets themselves, and at the heart of that is our dispatch strategy, as I mentioned earlier, which is really that ability to identify that fleet A is not going to assign a driver in time, have it now assigned to fleet B, have two fleets running concurrently, and if the moment one fleet does allocate a driver, we can then take the other fleet out of the picture.
I guess the fleets affect obviously they affect your reliability, right? Because if you're not performing well, how do you manage that? Is that quite a internal process that you guys do in terms of not vetting them, but in terms of understanding performance and making sure that it's not therefore affecting Nash and therefore affecting customer experience?
Yeah, I mean, we're effectively empowering the merchant to take those decisions.
Yeah.
So we sit there as that infrastructure layer, but they are then with the analytics that we provide them, they can then at a store level, at a customer level, at a fleet level, see how they're ranking and rank them differently in terms of the order of priority that they offer them the jobs.
Wow.
So we will definitely, I think both from a cost and reliability perspective, probably the biggest, a number of the external fleets are quite similar in price, but actually the big unknown is how much is it costing you to run your internal fleet? And how efficient are they in comparison to the externals? Is driver A taking a long way round? Is he being paid by the hour, by the mile? Is he never taking the jobs that mean take him in the wrong direction?
I find it riveting because I wonder: is there an understanding when you go to hospitality brands, for instance? Do they have an understanding of those metrics and those costs before you arrive? If you know what I mean. And so, because I don't think we would have. I don't think we would I think we'd know basically what was happening and what was going on, but I don't think I'd be able to give you a real firm structure around.
You'll typically have the clear visibility on the cost per hour that you're paying a driver, and maybe on the fuel costs, and then there are obviously the hidden costs. Are you taking somebody out of a store, out of a restaurant to jump on a bike and deliver? Is it the manager themselves, and what goes wrong when they're not in the store? Maintenance on vehicles, bicycles, and the like. So I think some of the indirect costs are not particularly well tracked, but they might have a per hour, per drop visibility. I think that whereas previously it fell into sort of two camps of I want nothing to do with logistics, I'm going to outsource it all, or no, I've got a couple of guys, they're brilliant, I want to have my own fleet. It's now becoming that slightly more hybrid model where people want to cross over.
100%. Because you need that back, with reliability, unfortunately, people aren't always reliable, right? And they'll let you down. I think having option, they talk about it with football teams, right? Having a plan B. You can't just play one way all the time. So occasionally you need that plan B just to get out of trouble. And also to, as you said, to be able to kind of A/B test around what's working for you as a cost base. I think it's super interesting. And what kind of? Go on, sorry.
I was going to say there's kind of almost a tipping point where typically we'll see that a particular, it might be a small independent, it might be a large chain. They'll have one or two guys that they can highly rely on, but the moment it gets to 3 or 4, the reliability drops massively. They've got the sort of the loyal pair that
it's like the ugly
always on
that you've never met before.
Exactly,
suddenly carrying your food around. And the one thing about hospitality and food is people are uber precious about how their dish is going out and how it arrives at said customer. And I think that alleviates some of the risk, right? Being able to sit there and say, do you know what, we have got another option here, and we know it's a low cost option, or we know it's a cost option that fits within our budget, whatever it might be. But that ability to be able to do that's huge. I think it's super important. And you mentioned grocery. I'm really interested about. I know there's not loads of crossover between hospitality and grocery, but there is some. What kind of things do you face in grocery when you kind of, I suppose, when you're looking at the trends that they're facing and what's happening with them? We were talking about pilfering. I'm from Liverpool. We call it pilfering in Liverpool. I think some people call it theft. They need to get over themselves.
I mean, no stats to hand, but I mean, certainly, in-store pilfering is a much larger issue for grocery than online delivery or pilfering. So
I love that you've adopted my word.
Completely, it's pilfering from now on.
If I don't see it on your website, I'll be very disappointed.
But I mean, I suppose we can give them the visibility on exactly, if an order is delivered, 5 items are missing. We can pinpoint exactly what was the fleet and who was the driver.
I think it's a big issue for still that, and a lot of time spent then recovering refunds, all this kind of stuff, and just being able to work out. I used to spend probably a day a week with my CFO and Pie Minister working out why delivery didn't match to the till or whatever it might to the EPOS till. Sorry, didn't match the EPOS. But it was a lot of time spent doing that, and the pilfering element or the theft element of that, or even just the mismanagement of delivery is quite a big factor, I think, that which needs countering in if you're running a profitable delivery business.
Yeah, and we touched on it earlier, but just in a small independent grocery store, if you are trying to run your delivery by using one of your staff and you've got a small van parked outside, apart from all the costs associated to that van, you're also taking that member of staff out.
Yeah.
That's one less member of staff on the till. It's one less member of staff to keep an eye on pilfering. And so, there's a number of equations there. And with delivery, going back to that point, you can also have the visibility if a bag arrives and 2 items are missing, photo proof of delivery, photo proof of pickup, customer information, and you start to see trends and say, well, actually, this customer's constantly saying that they didn't get X, Y, and Z, and actually this is the 4th time this month, and maybe it's not the driver, it's the customer.
God forbid. I'm sure that may happen. And you mentioned obviously Nash is in the US, or born out the US.
Yeah.
Do you see in the different regions you operate in, is there very similar trends you're seeing in terms of delivery? I'm always super interested to see where you alluded to a bit where it might be going in terms of catering. Is that something we're following on from other regions, or is it something that you've seen everywhere?
I think definitely some differences in the markets. Distances are greater in the US. Yeah. So typically we'll be going up to 5 miles in the UK. Could easily be up to 15k and beyond in the US. There are a significantly larger number of regional fleets. I think it's one of the things that we are working with the sort of the local community to try and encourage smaller fleets to come on board. We can even put a merchant's internal fleet and put them as a fleet available
you need that
to other
flexibility, right? That ability to operate in those areas that historically people haven't been able to get to. I remember, I forget the name now. Stuart, is it? When Stuart first came on, when we were Prime Minister again, they could only cover certain areas at that point. And it was a real blocker for us at the time because we just couldn't reach who we wanted to. I'm sure they're much bigger now. But those kind of things must stunt growth or potentially stunt growth if you can't get accessibility to these fleets. Yeah.
I mean, as a minimum, you might want 1 or 2 internal drivers. And then, you've got a wide range to pick from the Ubers and the Just Eats and the Stuarts of this world.
Yeah.
Which will give you a lot of coverage. In the US, it's definitely much more regional.
Really?
Yeah, and actually much more car-based as well.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, they like their cars. We like our cars, but they're
lazy. The distance is longer, I suppose. Yeah. And in terms of the product itself, then, so you guys obviously we've talked a bit about what the product does, but what does the evolution of the product look like? What you can talk about. What does the next step look like for Nash? Is there more coming, or is it drilling down more into what you're doing in the reliability piece? Say it again. Reliability piece.
Yeah, reliability, customer experience will always be at the core.
Yeah.
I think the evolutions will be around areas like catering, frozen meal kits in hospitality, grocery. It's always really around as they expand and their requirements expand, which is definitely their fastest growing area within the grocery segment is delivery. How can we guarantee that reliability by having additional fleets? Pharmacy is well ahead of us in the US, but I think that's a big area.
So pharmacy's out on delivery regularly?
Yeah, I mean, typically at the moment in the UK, you might have one local driver hired directly by the pharmacy and
they're doing
paid on shift to go and do it, sporadic deliveries. The trend is much more towards the hospitality style online ordering. I need my tends to be sort of broken down into, your prescription drugs, your non-prescription drugs, and then highly complex things like.
I was trying not to be thick and say something stupid, but for prescription drugs, it must be huge, right? Because the accessibility for people who need them most of the time are aging population, right? Who can't get to the shop, or the shop doesn't exist anymore, right? It's no longer on the corner anymore. So that's huge, isn't it? Being able to reach those people. So I guess from both ends of the delivery there, that really works for both people.
And it's a very specialised service, but it's even, becomes applicable in areas like hospitality. Do you want a 4-digit PIN at delivery? It helps you to basically identify the customer without sharing too much personal data.
Yeah.
GDPR.
So they're learning a lot, or learnt a lot, I suppose, from what's gone on with Uber delivery over the last 5-10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've set the gold standard for what delivery experience needs to look like. And I think that other areas for us, I think, when I mentioned meal kits, I think for our existing same-day customers that also want to ship nationwide, next-day shipping is an area that we can certainly look at. And then it becomes into those specialty areas like in retail, big and bulky, delivering sofas, installation, those kind of things.
I'm still on my £250 drill thinking, where is it? And is it coming? No, it's really interesting. And what about in the UK for you guys? Because you obviously work with a few customers. Is there anything you can share around, I suppose, because one of the real benefits of doing this thing is talking about some of the key advantages your customers have had. Is there anything you can share with us that you don't have to mention names if you don't want to?
No, sure. So the sort of typically we'll work across the board, small SMBs right the way through to large enterprises. We white label the platform, so some of the marketplaces out there will actually be entirely powered by Nash behind the scenes on all of their delivery without you really realizing it. We work with the likes of Flipdish, App4, StoreKit, and some of the other leading online food ordering platforms. And so really it's about supporting those thousands of SMBs and mid-tiers. We were talking about mid-tiers and enterprises, because haven't got enough enterprises in the UK.
Was I right saying it? It's an enterprise in the UK. Is it like a 30, 40 site? Would they fall into that category?
Yeah, I think if you're up at about 100, maybe a couple of hundred,
you do
versus a couple of thousand.
Right, okay, so,
yeah. But for them, it's really, how can we professionalise their delivery experience, and how can we effectively help them wean themselves off the marketplaces. We talked about the tech stack. How can I now build that customer relationship and potentially add 20+% onto my gross margin?
I was about to say the finances of doing that. Then obviously, I mean, last time I used them as an operator, it was between 30 and 35%. I don't know if it's changed in terms of is that the same deal still?
It's around 30%. The customer's paying £2.99 for delivery. Some imaginary service charge of 50. Was it a packaging charge, an admin fee? Shoved on top.
I need to build a business with a packaging fee.
Yeah, exactly. You can push the delivery cost up to £3.50 easily for a marketplace customer, but then somehow they're still paying 30%. The merchants are paying 30% to the marketplace.
And I don't think anyone's ever really settled on it. Although everyone's been paying it and it's been happening for years, it's almost like a bit of a necessity. I don't think anyone's ever really sat down and looked at their model and go, God, that really works for us. They can't be. I mean, it's 30% of your margin. It's madness.
Seems like busy fools, really.
Yeah, it really does.
Your revenues are going up. You're thinking you're flying, but actually when you break it down, you're making a couple of quid.
And I really want to tell you a story now. Someone who told me they were doing working with delivery and all the aggregators, and they switched the business off because they were worried about it. And whilst their turnover dropped by £1 million, their EBITDA stayed the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you could argue the brand piece there and the market reaching more people, getting the brand out there, but that's staggering, right? To take £1 million off your top line and not affect your bottom line. So it's very interesting.
And there's, I think, a growth of sort of newer marketplaces coming in to compete really at a regional level. Work with the local Eats franchise brands. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but they have hundreds of local marketplaces. Chester Eats or Southampton Eats.
They're so valuable as well, aren't they? There's in Liverpool, there's a group called the Liverpool Food Network,
right?
Run by a friend of mine called Louise, and she has like 250. Sorry, Louise, everyone's gonna be ringing them, but they have like 250 small restaurants, probably independent sites within her little group. And they're cracking to have on the books because they're busy. These guys are doing decent money. They've got delivery probably going on, and it's all. But they're really lagging in tech. She was telling me the other day, and I was like, that's a lot to deal with. But she was saying that they almost need like a set tech stack out of a box type thing for you, because especially delivery, because I don't think they think beyond. They kind of just open the restaurant, get going, and then they're like, we need to do this as well. And they kind of just layer on. Yeah. And the easy option is to go on the normal marketplaces, right? Exactly. Rather than look any further. So it's about how you reach those people and talk to them and really kind of educate them.
Yeah. I mean, if you are on the marketplace and you haven't got the comms flowing smoothly, your customers are ringing you up every 10 minutes going, where's my order? Yeah. If you're not sending them that nice text with the tracking link. And then that obviously becomes a real pain point within the restaurant. You're trying to take bookings, you're trying to seat people, take orders.
It's anti-restaurant, isn't it? Because you end up just doing admin during a restaurant. I mean, and restaurants are about experience and food and people, and not admin. And I think the one thing when delivery came along, I remember thinking, God, we're standing at a tablet all bloody night pressing buttons, and we're just lost. And I get it, there's a need for it, so we have to service it, but there must be a better way.
And I think you raised an interesting point, because there's also this sort of brand experience piece, and there is obviously now recognition that there's a lot to be gained from offering delivery, but if you're a extremely high-end Mayfair based sushi restaurant, you don't want marketplace drivers coming in the raincoats and the brandy.
The helmets.
You want to be using something more discreet, more on brand, and have the ability to really access those kind of delivery fleets.
I walked through Knightsbridge today, and there was a little old bread, like what I call an old bakery van, like the old shaped bakery van, parked outside this that's it, parked outside an independent bakery. And I stopped, and the guy was loading it up, and I was chatting to him and said, do you have lots of sites? He said, no, just one. And I said, what's this? He said, I just made sure the van looked like us because I wanted to. And I was just thinking, that's so relevant for today. I just thought it was brilliant, right? Because it just struck me a mile off. And everyone was looking at him because it's just a classic old van. But the way he branded it up, it just looked and felt like that bread coming out there was warm off the, out the oven. It's just really clever. And I think that that's what you're alluding to, that to be able to maintain that brand experience, if you want to, through your delivery as well, becomes super powerful, because that ability to reach multiple people you'd never see before beyond bricks and mortar is no one can argue with that. Surely that's a no-brainer.
We've definitely seen a few food truck businesses coming onto the platform recently.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? That old, like almost 1930s, 40s style coming back in.
Yeah,
maybe my granddad will get a job back again.
In New York, I remember, and at the time it was food trucks and Twitter, or X, and it was this big trend of basically the food trucks moving around and then posting on X where they were going to be for the that afternoon, and everyone was desperately following them. Now they can basically find out where their food truck
thanks
is.
To Nash.
Thanks to Nash, they can find the food truck and have it delivered, so they don't have to chase it down the street.
That's what I love about tech, actually, more than anything. The fact that not only, because a lot of people look at EPOS or something like that and say, it's a commodity, right? You have to have it. It's one of those things. But what's really exciting about tech sometimes is when it takes these little things that nobody really knows about outside of a restaurant or a grocery store that bother them every day, that cause them problems every day, and fixing that problem. Yeah. That's the real benefit of tech, where you can actually get into the nitty gritty of it and say, right, where are you losing time? Where are you losing customers? And where are you losing brand appeal? And if you can fix those three things through tech, my God, everyone should buy it, right? Because it just makes everything so much slicker and easier. And in terms of managing the process, delivery in general, so if we're talking about a smaller independent site, do they need a human to come and kind of oversee all of what Nash does, or are you kind of doing most of the heavy lifting for them?
It's a 30-minute onboarding maximum, and then it runs in the background, and it operates within their existing tech stack, right? So it's not an extra tablet.
Yeah, you're not buying an extra bit.
No. Yeah. You can log in and have a look at your analytics,
or not.
Or not, as you want, if it's running smoothly.
No, I was listening to an operator this morning they were on a panel for an ATS, and she was brilliant. And she said, to be honest, I don't really look at the analytics. The owner of the product was sat next to her going, I've spent my life building that. Exactly. But it's the truth, right? And she said, I will. When I've got time, I will sit down because I want to understand what we've done this year. She says, but right now, I just don't have time. Yeah. And I find it
does definitely need to be headless. It's got to sit in the background, plug into the existing screen. No one wants another tablet, another screen. No. They've got way too much. There's not enough room in the restaurant. And you certainly don't want to be investing in having to train all your store staff in how to manage logistics. It just needs to happen seamlessly in the background.
And I guess from a product side, it makes you sticky as well, right? Because you're not doing that. You're not being obtruse and causing more drama. You're sitting in the background, and the best tech is quiet tech, right?
It is indeed, without doubt.
Very
100%.
Cool. And look, and the next, I suppose, I always ask this question, the next 2 years, and we talked about a little bit there. For Nash, it's more about what you talked about in terms of those trends coming up.
Yeah, I think it's we'll obviously be pushing more and more into tech stack integration, becoming really core within some of the larger players in the UK. We have already started to expand into Europe. We've got clients already in France, Ireland, Germany.
Very different in Northern Europe in terms of the way, because it's like mom and pop style, less chains, more.
Yeah, I think. Actually, the real difference is behind the scenes. It's the fleets themselves, how they employ their drivers. Versus,
oh God, yes.
Yeah, but it's a whole different. We haven't got time for that.
Yeah, no, let's not even go into it. Yeah, France and Germany, good luck.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think we'll continue to push into the 4 key sectors I talked about, and see really what we can do to constantly just improve customer experience.
Perfect. Look, lovely to meet you. It's been too long. You're appearing. You're having done to the trade shows this autumn. Are you going to do?
Yeah.
What's casual dining and what's the other one called now?
Lunch. We got the
Hospitality Tech Expo now.
HosTech, and we've got Restaurant Takeaway Innovation Expo, which I think
I feel like you've got them all lined up.
needs a shorter name, I think, for that one. But
it doesn't trip off the tongue, does it? No, and you'll be able to find Patrick there. And if they want to find the website and have a chat to you personally, can they reach out?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's usenash.com, and I'm very, very easy to find on LinkedIn.
Stop short of giving his email out. Lovely. Look, thanks very much for joining us in Brewdog. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you soon.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, mate.